I'm a person with a deep faith perspective, and really felt like God wasn't releasing me to go. He said, "I've got you here for a season, and you're going to go through these hard times along with other people." And so got a chance to do that, and don't regret that, but it wasn't necessarily what I would have chosen. And I've been able to encourage a lot of other people along the way when they're in those situations and go, you may just need to tough it out, and it won't be for forever, but it's going to be that time.
Hey everyone, welcome to this episode of the Intentional Leader Podcast. This is the podcast where you hear the real stories of people just like you who become extraordinary leaders. You will learn valuable lessons from their lives, lessons that you can apply to become the best leader you were created to be. When leaders are intentional, lives are changed. I'm your host, Sean Olson. I am an author, speaker, business owner, and obviously podcast host. Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of the Intentional Leader Podcast. If you could all do us a huge favor as we get going today, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, leave some comments, leave some hearts, all those beautiful things to make the algorithms happy. We'd greatly appreciate that to continue to expand our reach across the world. Listeners, you're in for a treat today. My guest is Bill Montgomery. Bill is the president and CEO of River Radio, which is based in Ohio, but is expanding its footprint in dramatic ways. Bill, welcome to the Intentional Leader Podcast. Great to have you here.
Thanks, Sean. I'm excited to be here and just share a little about my journey, and have been grateful to your podcast and just hearing a lot of other people's journeys.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a joy. And you and I had a chance to meet in person a couple of times over the last 6 months and realize that we have the same heartbeat, which is the most important thing. And that is just to be impacting people in dramatic ways. I know you're doing that through River Radio. We look forward to hearing about that. So just take us back a little bit, your professional journey. Where have you been and leadership lessons learned along the way?
Absolutely. It's funny that some of my leadership lessons occurred even before my professional journey. I remember going to, even in high school, getting taken to seminars and conferences, and it was just really cool because I think it developed in me a heart for just wanting to be a learner and learning good things along the way, good life lessons. But then my leadership or my journey really started out of college. I got into radio in college, went to Cedarville University, which is a small liberal arts Christian college in Ohio, just about an hour outside of Columbus, between Columbus and Dayton. And in there kind of found a love for radio and had some good mentors along the way that coached in leadership. And so I got my first, real job after doing radio there at the university back in Columbus for a station that's still here and a company that still exists doing a lot of radio, Salem Communications. Yeah. And it was interesting. We had a boss retire and a new one come in about a year into my journey. And he was a firm believer in leadership training, and he started training all of us in that, taking us to conferences, guys like John Maxwell, and it was kind of in John's early days. I think back then he maybe only had 2 or 3 books out, and I don't know if he feels like he's got 100 out now.
I think at least that, yes.
But that really started the journey of, being a lifelong learner. My boss there, Dan Craig, really groomed me along the way. And within 2 or 3 years of him coming, moved me into a management role. And so at that point really decided, wow, I've now got people working for me. I've got to know what I'm doing here and got to start learning. And what I appreciated about his leadership style was, he met with us regularly, the different leaders really built into us, but then collaboratively worked with us. We had a weekly breakfast where we would just be reading a book together. Hey, read a chapter. We're going to come discuss over breakfast this week. And we did that for, I was there for 10 years and probably 6 or 7 of those years until I left. That's exactly what he did. Is he just
Yeah.
had us discussing a chapter of a book every week with our group of local leaders, and it had just had a profound influence in my life.
Yeah, I love that. I like the aspect you're talking about with both the formal and informal. Formal is kind of like going to those conferences, taking in content, learning what's really there, than the informal of a book club. And I think this is one of those areas where a lot of leaders struggle, Bill, is they think that for them to really develop their people, to be the leader and having direct reports to develop them, they have to have something formal and they have to know something that their people don't know. When really a lot of times it's just walking that journey and sharing what you've been through and sharing in a book together and learning simultaneously.
Yeah, I completely agree. And then that, because that leads you into things that, oh my goodness, I remember when I come upon this situation. We talked about this a month ago, a year ago, and now I'm seeing it, and I've got some context for how to best apply, some of those principles, and that was really good. And then he would, do similar things like, hey, we just went through this situation together. Let's talk about how did that go? How should we do this? Coach live in the moment, and
Yeah.
I appreciated that.
Formal debriefs. Those are awesome. So I want to press pause on the story and leadership for a second. I want to go back. You talked about being in college at Cedarville, jumping in there. We have a heart for Cedarville. Our daughter went there for a year. I also was a DJ on my college radio station at Kentucky Christian University. But I think it's just a fun thing that people always hear radio personalities, right, or DJs, but they never really know, like, why do they do that? So when you got into that at Cedarville and then following on to your first job, what was the drive, the energy, and the motivation to be a DJ? What'd you love about it?
It was funny. I wasn't looking for it. They were launching the student radio station. I found myself, I was needing to shift majors, and found myself in the studio watching a launch of the new station, and I just fell in love with it. And I think it was both the mass media, but also the intimacy of radio is kind of a one-on-one connection. So while there may be hundreds or thousands of people listening out there, the reality of it is most people are consuming it as an individual or just as a small group of family in their car, in their home. And that ability to just communicate with them, to be a partner, to be a friend, to be on the journey with somebody and encouraging them, even though you aren't necessarily getting feedback, you're helping educate them, encourage them, teach them, and really just develop a friendship. It's honestly the way podcasts are right now, where people are engaging with this, hearing you, on your journey and other people's, and I think that really is something that is compelling.
Yeah, it's a fun part of it. I remember, thinking back, the station I was at was really small as far as like the watts and its reach and its impact and stuff, but campus would hear it, right?
Yes.
And so it was a combination of different things. And it was always just that joy of knowing there's some students who are studying late night right now and they're listening, and how we can tap into that. And I like how you're talking about that with that one-on-one, because it does seem unnatural, right? That I'm sitting in a booth somewhere talking into a microphone, but I'm speaking directly to that person and making an impact there. Yeah, it's fun stuff. We'll pick back up on your story then.
Yeah. So I was at that station for about 10 years. Through some mutual friends, learned about an opportunity within our company in Seattle. So I had never been really outside of the Midwest. Certainly had not been out of Ohio in the job market, and so pursued that opportunity. Very interestingly, and this is probably one of the leadership lessons I picked up along the way of maybe how not to do things.
Yeah.
As I was pursuing the opportunity in Seattle with the company, and you would kind of just apply, each one operated kind of independently as they did hiring, so it wasn't like a transfer. I learned that the company may have wanted me in a different market to do different things. But what was unique about that is nobody ever communicated that with me directly. They just I felt very much like a pawn on a chessboard that somebody was trying to move without consulting me. And it really rubbed me the wrong way, and my wife, and suddenly felt like we don't like this. And it's helped me learn, if you have an idea for somebody and their journey, bring them into the journey. Don't just hey, you're getting shoved over here or moved over here. And it came to the point where we really had to go, hey, if the opportunity in Seattle isn't going to open up, I may just leave the company altogether. Um,
Wow.
and it really ended that one conversation and moved us towards Seattle. But it was just a very eye opening part of the journey that, hey, if I have a different vision for somebody that's in my company, I need to bring them into that vision and maybe give them the why.
Absolutely. And we fail to do that so often. It's one of those things. It's like, I think a lot of leaders are gifted at seeing more in their people, right? Like, I can see where they can go, but what if they don't want to go there? Or what if what we see in them isn't totally on par? And I like how you use the word of a pawn in that. And I do think, I'm going to give benefit of the doubt to that boss at that point. They probably don't think they're doing that, right? They weren't thinking, hey, I'm going to manipulate and maneuver Bill in this way, and he's going to be a pawn in my bigger chess game. If you do have a leader like that, run, get out of it now, right? It's usually unknown, though. They don't realize they're doing that. But the need for connection, communication, relationship, and those one-on-ones, just like, hey, Bill, I see this in you. Am I accurate in this? Is this something you even care about? Do you want to pursue that? And then even shifting it, what do you care about? What do you want to pursue? Where do you want to be in 3 years? I think leaders fail to do that, Bill. I'd be interested in your perspective. I think later leaders fail to do that because they're afraid of losing good people.
Yeah.
But the problem is, if they don't, they're going to lose them anyway.
Yeah. And that's probably helped me now where even at our own company, if we've got people where maybe they've reached a ceiling and we don't have an opportunity, we're a small company, we go, let us help you get to the next part of your journey because we're going to lose you anyway if we don't. But I'd rather have the benefit of working together during that time as opposed to, again, just going, well, I'm going to shift you here and move you here. And it's been very beneficial for us.
Good. All right. Well, leadership lesson learned there. Keep on going now.
Yeah. So did end up in Seattle. Learned some interesting some lessons there of when you have leaders that maybe don't align with the company culture and values, and they're your boss, and you've got to maybe fight upstream to do that. And again, I think a lot of times you kind of pointed this out. People don't know maybe
Yeah.
that they're that way, but it's happening. And so you've got to, either make excuses for them or you've got to do damage control a lot of times. And I felt like for about 2.5 years, that was my role, was just damage control, try to maintain the culture under the culture
Yeah.
with some other good people around me. The people that I worked with were great people, but we all had to do a little damage control along the way. And it was interesting because there were times in there I wanted to leave and never had an opportunity. Even when I tried, no doors opened, nothing was there. And from I'm a person with a deep faith perspective, and really felt like God wasn't releasing me to go. He said, I've got you here for a season, and you're going to go through these hard times along with other people. And so got a chance to do that and don't regret that, but it wasn't necessarily what I would have chosen. And I've been able to encourage a lot of other people along the way when they're in those situations and go, you may just need to tough it out, and it won't be for forever, but it's going to be that time. And then at some point I found an opportunity that I really felt like God said, okay, you can go. And at that point, a door opened up that I wasn't expecting and went on staff at a church that I was attending for about 2.5 years, which wasn't where I thought I would go. But again, I think it's where I was supposed to be for that period of time, and really got to do something different with my leadership skills in working with having a more volunteer group working under me than paid people. But
That's a big difference.
Managing volunteers, a whole different.
It is. I like that part of your story, though, that season, right? And, I give scriptural reference a lot on the show, too. And my wife and I, in our first ministry and things like that, we affectionately called it our wilderness experience. But you look throughout scripture, you look throughout history, and we learn the most in those difficult times. And if you didn't have that season of having to wait it out and develop other people, and I like kind of your idea of holding the culture together underneath it, because we live in a culture today where people are like, if I don't like my boss, if I don't like my company, I'm out. Yeah, you might need to be out ultimately, but you're really, in many senses, forsaking your own opportunity to grow and to try to figure something out. And so we've always been in the mind, and you are too, of like, okay, God, if this is where you have me for a while, help me to learn every single thing I need to learn while I'm here. And when it's time to go, I'll go. And he usually will open those doors and say, it's time. Here you go.
Yeah, boy, that's well said. And so it was funny because there was kind of that next season inside the church ministry that honestly helped me also, kind of restore some of the frustration and culture wounds that I had, and really got good. And then I got a phone call from a buddy that I did college radio with back here in Columbus, that said, "Hey, we need a sales manager," and that's what I had primarily done. I was not a DJ most of the time. I was in the sales and sales management world, in radio, and they did that back in Columbus for River Radio, and so. We moved our family back home to Columbus, where I've been now the last 17 years, and had just a great opportunity to come back into a new culture, new people, that and really helped with those leaders shape the culture of what we have now. Had a boss that had really fought against a hard culture and had put in a great one, and really was not afraid to bring good people around him that might know more than he did, and build something really good. And so we've had the opportunity to have a lot of people move up into increased roles. A lot of people started very ground level and are now up into different leadership roles or bigger roles, and that's been exciting to see people grow in their journey. And that happened to me about 3 years ago. My boss that brought me in retired, and I moved into the president CEO role. And it's funny now because you can look back and go, man, I saw things that people did in my journey, and I don't want to repeat those mistakes. And I want to, have an open door to go, hey, if you see me doing something that you think goes against our culture, or, is maybe a blind spot that I've got, you have permission to come in here and talk to me about that.
Hey everyone, this is Sean Olson coming to you saying, let's make 2026 the best year ever. Well, how do we make 2026 the best year ever? Part of it is to realize it is going to be a great year. I really feel like the conditions in the US and around the world are really pro-business right now. And I think there's going to be incredible business growth if you are intentional and have a plan for it. So I want to invite you to our Leadership Plan 2026 Boot Camp. It is on December 11 and 12, 3 hours each day, completely virtual, taking in from where you are. We'll be working through a workbook, and here's what we're going to be hitting. How are you laying out your leadership in 2026? You personally, individually, how are you going to lead? How are you going to really impact your own life and the life of people around you? How are you going to lead your team? Where are you going to build your team, adding members to it, helping them achieve heights that they've never achieved before? And how are you going to lead in your business and your enterprise? Being strategic, being intentional, being impactful, making 2026 the best year ever. Here's the thing. Your competitors, they're planning for 2026. They want to be proactive, not reactive. You need to step in front of that yourself and be proactive in all that you do. So I encourage you, join us for Leadership Plan 2026 Boot Camp on December 11 and 12. Click the link below, register for the boot camp. I look forward to seeing you there. When you're done, you'll have a workbook filled out and you're ready to make 2026 the best it can be. I'll see you at the boot camp. Have a great day and God bless. I like that. That open door, that communication makes a big difference. So I know 17 years at River Radio, you started out in the sales realm, then you got promoted to vice president for a while, and now president and CEO. So there are a lot of people that think, okay, I'm in this organization right now, I could never be in the C-suite, but yet you've done that. And so what is something you can share with our listeners about that patient endurance and to make those moves and to realize you can make that path, you can get to the C-suite?
Yeah. I think a couple of things. Number one, consistency is important. And people are watching how you live your life in that role, whether it's for a year or 5 years or 10 or 20.
Yeah.
And they're going to determine at that point, if you moved up, could I follow this person? How are they? Do they operate with character and integrity? And how do they perform under pressure? And how do they perform under stress? And so I think that's important, because if you move up into the C-suite, there's people that worked with you as your peers or maybe under you, and you want them on your team when you move to that. And that's super important. And then I think also going, what do I need to learn along the way? What additional skills do I need to get that maybe aren't going to serve me super well today, but are going to serve me well tomorrow? And how can I be learning those constantly so that if that opportunity ever presents itself, I'm ready, whether it's in the organization I'm in or in another organization, because maybe that's where the door opens up.
Absolutely. I agree with all that. This great insight and inputs, and what you're saying essentially that I really love about this is you have to be you. You can't change you. Your role might change, but they're promoting the person. They're not promoting the position.
Yeah.
And they're ready for Bill to move up.
That's really true. Yeah. And the reality of it is I am not my predecessor, and I don't do things the way he did, because we have different personality styles and different strengths and different weaknesses. And, there's things that I learned from him that I'm like, oh, I need to take that with me because I don't do that as well. And that's a great thing. And other things of, hey, that was fine. That's not how I operate, and I'm going to do things differently than he did. And that doesn't make him right or wrong. It's just, it's got to be who I am, and I've got to manage from that perspective.
Absolutely. So let's talk about radio for a little bit, because I think a lot of people, obviously everybody listens to radio in some capacity, but they don't necessarily understand it as an industry, as a business. I know from when you and I had coffee together that River Radio has made a number of acquisitions over the last number of years. And that's where business is today, right? Business big picture is you're either buying or you are being bought. Unfortunately, that's just kind of the realm of where we are. But radio is a business. I know that River Radio has made a number of acquisitions. Just talk about that business side of radio and help our listeners see that it's like every other business. It just has a different output.
Yeah, no, I think that's very well said. We're a little bit of a unique entity. We're a nonprofit organization, and we derive our income from both donations of listeners, but then advertising as well. And so what we've had to do, and as we've looked at, okay, how do we move forward in the future? We've had a small group of stations, 4 or 5, that has changed over the time, primarily in Central Ohio and some of the surrounding communities. And as we began to look at a strategic vision of, okay, where are we going and what is radio doing, we realized for stability, we've got to grow a little bit. And so we made an acquisition still in Ohio, up in the Worcester area, just kind of south of the Canton-Akron area, but a station that covered a tremendous amount of counties, had a big signal. And so we were able to, expand what we were doing, but not double the staff, just add a few more people. And it's been amazing because we've been able to keep the staff, the majority of the staff that they had, fold them into our organization. So, got to keep the culture together and really work together in that. So that's been good. And then in the midst of that opened up another door to merge with another group of radio stations that had the same, with the acquisition, we changed a format. We changed everything we were doing to our contemporary Christian music format. But then we went to another organization and had a conversation because they were doing exactly what we were doing, and we could do it. We felt like we could do what we were doing better together. We could scale more things. We could, have a lot more benefits together. We could kind of divide and conquer the different responsibilities that they were doing over a very small staff, and we could fold a lot of those responsibilities into the team that we had. And so we are now went from about 4 stations a couple years ago to 15 today through Ohio. And so that's been great. There's a lot of economies of scale that have been beneficial, and we definitely see some growth in our business channels as well as our donation channels, and figuring out how do we work across multiple offices? How do we market in different
Yeah.
communities? Do we still stay engaged in the communities that we're in? I, I think that's one of the biggest challenges of radio as you grow is, we could go, hey, we're consolidating everything to Columbus and we're not going to be in all of these other communities. But I think the thing that's beautiful about radio is that community connection, the same way local newspapers have had, and I think in most communities have lost, is we don't want to lose that connection with the listener. Figure out what's that rhythm of how do we want to stay there with concerts and with events and being involved in the local chambers of commerce and being involved in those communities so that they see us regularly and that they know who we are. And so we've got to bring a product of excellence over the air. We've got to bring a product of relevance and something that is community minded as we're in those communities so that we stay connected to the people in those communities.
That's great insight. So I love the story about, acquiring the station in Worcester and keeping that staff intact, which allows you then to continue to handle that community on a relational level and be involved with them. And it's interesting because with businesses, companies expand, especially service-based businesses, that's that same issue, keeping the relationship and keeping it real and having that. And so it's a challenge for you guys too. So let's take a side swipe here on the radio industry for a second. With the advancement of technology, podcasts have become huge. Streaming has become huge in different ways. And traditional, I'll use that word in quotes, traditional radio has in some senses maybe lost its need and or relevance. So how are you navigating that, number one? And number two, what is that new relevance for radio? Because everything changes. That means there's a new opportunity. So how have you navigated that?
It's a great question. I feel like that's kind of the moving ship that we're on right now, that we're navigating almost on a daily basis. And it's kind of the studies are telling us that still, 90+% of adults are tuning into radio in the average week. So radio is still very relevant to the community, but they're listening fewer, hours or minutes over the course of that week. And so again, you've got to stay very relevant. You've got to give them the things that they want when they're tuning into you. So for us, we've got to, people can consume the music that we have other places. And so we've, rather than, hey, we want to wait until music is very popular and then we want to add it. We've got to be on the front end of that. We've got to be a place for music discovery as well as play people's favorite songs. And so we've had shifts of how we do that over the past years. We also have really needed to look at ourselves as a media company and say, okay, we've got everywhere that people want to be. So I need to be on your FM dial, but I need to be on your computer so that you can stream us perhaps at work or at home. I need to be on your smart home devices. I need to have a mobile app. I need to have, maybe two-way texting where you can communicate with the DJ in the studio in a way that maybe we never communicated before. We've got to be out with community events and be there. And then we've got to have new media, like social media. We've got to be, in those places where you can interact with us and have community. We have an online small group so that
Really? Wow.
if you want to interact with us and it's just a daily Bible passage that you read, and discuss among yourselves. And some people go, hey, this is a great place for me to find community. We've got chaplains where, hey, if people have a prayer need, if they've got something and they're not connected to a local church, or maybe they don't have a way, they can reach out to our chaplains, in multiple ways on our app, on our website, with text, and have somebody that can reach out to them and encourage them and pray with them or help them find needs in the community that they've got. So that's another piece. And then I think the last part of that is new media like podcasts, where we have created some podcasts, some that are very much in our wheelhouse, some that are very different. You can consume some of the content on the air. Our morning show, you can get a recap of that every day. Maybe you can do something that's adjacent to that. Like we've got a podcast that's really popular that's about the Ohio State-Michigan game, which is always a big thing in Columbus. I've got a leadership podcast where we're, trying to get community leaders talking about their leadership journey, similar to what you're doing.
Yeah.
So we're having to stick our toe in a lot of different waters and figure out how can we continue to reach people and engage them in that way.
Awesome. So you just said all that in like 3 minutes, right? And it was very well done. It was very succinct. But I want to tap this for a second because everything you discussed, when you think about an organization, especially an industry that has a vast history of what it is, and now it is no longer that alone. And so you talked about all these additions, all these changes to stay relevant. How did you lead through that? Did you lose people along the way who are like, no, we're still radio. We're not going to. But it's kind of like adapt or die. You've got to go there. So how have you led through that to have your people buying into all those changes?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I think it is very much an adapt or die.
Mm-hmm.
I think we've had some people that as you said, decided this is not for me, and they decide to move along, and that's okay, and we encourage that. And I think also we have tried to move very collaboratively, and so let's have these discussions. Let's put some groups together. Let's do some studies. Let's do some deep dives. Let's go to our conferences, hear what they're saying, come back, unpack that. How does that apply to what we're doing here locally? And we've tried to foster a culture of innovation where we're willing to try things, even if it fails. And that doesn't mean you're a failure. That just means that didn't work. And so we're either going to throw that out or we're going to go, well, what if we try it this way, and do that. And so it's been ongoing iteration. And even talking to people outside of our industry to go, what do you see? What do you think we could do here? How could we take the ideas that are out there or things the way other industries are innovating and apply those to what we're doing and steal from other industries to try to.
Always keeping our eyes and ears open. What's going on out there? So as you shared that story, especially from the streaming side and your app and things like that, it opens up the door where you are no longer River Radio in Ohio with 15 plus stations. Now you can be reached anywhere. So I'm just kind of curious. I'm sure you guys are tracking your analytics and the demographics. How much has your reach expanded geographically because of new opportunities like streaming and apps?
Yeah. It's funny. A lot of that is just anecdotal from the stories that we hear, but folks that have moved outside of Ohio and they go, hey, we're listening down here in Florida, or we're listening over here in California or in Texas. And we certainly love to hear those stories. We've even got folks that have found us in other countries and, cause you can literally listen anytime. And so that's been something that's been very real too, is that reach has expanded. And while we are certainly Ohio based and Ohio centric, that's not the majority of what we talk about. And so it's such that if people don't have something where they're listening to or where they're living, they can listen to our stream and find it very relevant. They may not find the local concerts of interest because they're not going to those, but the content, the music, the things our DJs are talking about, they're going to find fit their lifestyle very well. And I think that's probably a thing that we will continue to do, is just have those reach outside of what we're doing.
Yeah, and I like the community aspect you've developed, right? With the Bible study and the opportunity for people to reach out for prayer. With us, our analytics of this particular podcast, half of our listeners, viewers are not in the U.S.
Wow.
And so if you're out there listening from one of those other countries, this is an opportunity for you. We will have in the show notes today links to everything for the River Radio so you can see where the streams are and the apps and all those sorts of things. So here's my last question for you in this conversation right now, Bill. As you look at where radio has come, and you just described all those new changes and things that are taking place, if you look at 26, because it's around the corner and we're already there, I know you are very strategic. What's next for River Radio and maybe even just radio as a whole?
Yeah. I think, and we're asking ourselves that question all the time. We've already got a 2-day offsite at the end of the year planned, with our leadership team to have more of those discussions. I think part of it is, are there other key strategic mergers, acquisitions that would make sense should either we have alignment with somebody or somebody wants to get out of the business, or, financially we're able to make those decisions. So I think that's part of it. I think we would still lean into discussions that way with terrestrial radio. And then I think it's, what other aspects, what things do we need to stop doing because they're not moving the needle? Are there, podcasts that we need to shed that,
Mhm.
hey, this was a great idea, but it's just not garnering the engagement? Because what we're finding, we can do a lot of things, but if it doesn't have any engagement or
Yep.
connection, maybe it's the thing we need to not be doing,
Yeah.
and let that go. So I think that's a big part of it, so that we can put more energy and effort into things that we are doing, because you know you can only put so much on the plate of your team members. Um,
Absolutely.
and I'm somebody that I want to do everything and I want to go everywhere.
Hmm.
I'm recognizing we can't, and we'll burn our
Yep.
people out. And so we've got to be, probably the next thing we've got to maybe do is shrink to grow, so that we can be more focused in the areas that we're having the most effectiveness with, whether that's physically in communities with events that we're doing or concerts that we're doing, or whether it's, hey, we shouldn't be doing 15 podcasts, maybe we need to do 5. And
Yeah.
maybe we need to find other ways to engage with people out there in the community.
Well, kudos to you for looking at it that way, because I know a lot of our listeners are entrepreneurs, solopreneurs, smaller businesses, and that is one of the things that kills small business. Is we started something, then we started something else, something else, something else, and all of a sudden we're doing 8 things, and we become married to what we have created, not married to what we're trying to accomplish. And when you become married to what you've created, it's hard to kill the dead horse and to jump off of it. So kudos to you guys for viewing it that way and trying to figure out how do we streamline and use our resources in the most applicable way, beneficial way. And it's interesting, in our business, Energize Professional Coaching, we built some great things. We're going through that. We're looking at something in 26, and we're like, if we don't get A, B, and C out of this particular program in 26, we're going to shoot it, because of
Wow.
the resources that it burns. But you've got to be there. At the same time, we're launching new things to have a broader reach. And I know
Yeah.
you're in that same frame of mind. And so you and I are like-minded in what's next and why can't we? And, that's why I always have to tell people I'm coaching, as well as myself, just because you can doesn't mean you should, right? And so you have to stay focused in on it. But part of that focus is what is actually having an impact today. So I love that you guys have that heart for it. I really do. So help our listeners really quick. River Radio, we talked about it a little bit today, but just give that 60 to 90-second pitch so they understand who River Radio is, because maybe they do want to tap into the stream or the app.
Yeah, absolutely. We're a missional organization. Our mission is to show people who Jesus really is. We do that primarily through contemporary Christian music on our website, stream, terrestrial radio, mobile app, and try to play a diverse but focused playlist that of both the favorites and contemporary things. We do a top 20 countdown on the weekends of top
Nice.
songs. And then we also try to lean into kind of fun and Jesus. So
Yeah.
there's a faith aspect to it, but we also know people need encouragement and they need to laugh.
Yeah.
And so our DJs want to be there to laugh along with you, to bring you in, some fun, some silliness, as well as some seriousness, because I think we need the mix of that in our lives.
Fantastic. I love it. Thank you for sharing that. Well, Bill, we end every episode with the same question to our guest. It's a quick tip question. What is something our listeners can do intentionally today to be a better leader?
Something that I've really been leaning into lately, especially in a culture where there seems to be a lot of division, a lot
Mhm.
of strife, a lot of frustration, is I've been leaning into listening,
Mm.
and asking a lot more questions, especially of people that maybe I don't understand or I disagree with, and getting meetings with those people and go, help me understand.
Love
Um,
it.
and I don't always necessarily end up where they're at. Um, but I do feel like I've ended up with good new relationships and good communication with people, so that we can know that we're on the same journey and maybe we want the same outcome and we've got different ways, and I can encourage them, support them, and learn from them.
Great tip. I love that. Listening to understand. And we realize in that process, though that topic that came out, we may have a disagreement, we're also going to realize we have a lot more in common than we thought.
Very
We
true.
really do. Great tip. I appreciate that. Well, Bill, it's been great to have you here today. Listeners, in the show notes, you can find links to get in touch with Bill. You can find links to River Radio and all those different pieces. We'd encourage you to listen in and not only be fed with music and with joy and fun from DJs, but to be fed in your heart and soul with Jesus. So, Bill, thank you for joining us on the Intentional Leader podcast. Great to have you.
Thanks so much, Sean. It's been a pleasure, my friend.
All right. Talk to you later.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Intentional Leader Podcast presented by Reenergize Professional Coaching. Be sure to see the show notes for links to Reenergize Professional Coaching and links to contact our guests. Now, hit that subscribe button so that you are alerted with every new episode of the Intentional Leader Podcast.